Alright. Alright, Chapter 5, MIG Welding, Haynes Welding Manual. Welding books are written there recently in 10 years have recommended the oxyacetylene arc welding equipment is the basic tool for the home shop. The welding at the time to make wire feed welding equipment was considered too expensive for amateur youth, despite with the advantage to make equipment with recommended indeed with the original design. The high protection shop worked only with much with the was chain with the intervene year the introduction lower the cost to make units competitive with the workforce, competitive with the marketplace have been brought with the wire feed made welding affordable range for the home shop welder and outgrowth the arc welding to make the process to conceive the way with the speed of the production in industrial application. The basic difference of the MIG stand with the metal and air gas welding, sometimes also referred to technical description as gas metal arc welding. Is the welding filler rod is automatically fed through a gun whenever the welding takes place. The welder does not need to stop the charge or change arc electrodes. The Airco company delivered the metal and air gas welding process. 5.1 UV the welder fed MIG welding expanded greatly with the last 10 years, encompassing body shop mufflers, race car builders, home and hobbyists, as well as the industrial production as work is designed for it, and its advantage speed, the simplicity, cleanliness, and the ability to work well on thick and thin materials. 5.2 among the compact MIG welders, the 110 volt field of the LMTMC MIG 130 features the 100% duty cycle at a 30 amp setting for the material that has been 25 duty cycle at 130 amps. Is designed for the body shop and hobbyist light maintenance use. 5.4 the Miller Electric makes the variety of the largely professional welding machines, but they also offer this Miller-Matic 130, which has the 290 volt, 20% duty, the capacity on 130 amps, putting the right in the mist for the 110 volts at home shop to make. 5.3 for the duty large scale shop, the heavy duty 220 volt, and like the MIG Master, offers the amperage of the most amp setting, high duty cycle, and there's extra feature for the timing various and welding functions. Right after World War II, it has been refined constantly ever since. The main advantage to metal and air gas welding processes because of the basic one, not having to stop to change electrodes, include being able to weld in all positions. There is no slag removal, and the welds are more clean with very little splatter compared to the arc welding. The welding can be produced a lot faster than other methods because of the wire feed rate with the automatic adjuster, which also makes the less distortion of the workpiece because of the less heat with the concentrated on the seam. The process that works on the welded joints that are irregular with a half of the gaps of the amperage of the wire side with the wire fed bonds can be toned to the ideal without almost distortion led the S welds on the thin sheet metal. The more advantages relate on how the welder was unable was use equipment that will these points as we continue. There are technical three different processes metal transfer the MIG and welding equipment. The one of the way concerned with the short arc and the short circuit process. Other types use the large industrial welding process for the high amperage, the large diameter welding is used with most of the MIGs machines suitable for the home shop. The design for the short arc process where molten in of the metal welding wire touched with the welding peel with the craze. The short circuit of the wire diameters are from 23,000 of an inch to 45,000 of an inch, and amperages in these machines are seldomly higher than 225 amps. Yet handle material of the thinnest audio body sheet metal to the plate thickness of the 1/2 inch range. Certainly couldn't cover everything in the home shop. The welder with the metal sculpture body man and the famed farmer and the ore metal iron worker will have to call for. In short, arc process the basic component of the MIG equipment that consists of the welding machine, which contains the AC/DC rectifier, constant voltage, potential wide feed rate mechanism that holds the large roll of wire, bolting shield of gas and most metals of the wheel welded cable to provide for the wire power of the gas torch with a simple trigger operated torch gun and a ground or work cable. An operation welder brings the torch down to the work until the wire electrode will stick out of the gun 1/2 inch to 3/4 inches, touching the work where there seems to be with he flips his helmet and lands it down with the pull of the trigger, and then the trigger immediately puts the power into the wire of the arc against the work to create a very localized while the shielding gas simultaneously released with the shielding of envelope over the forming welding, preventing the contamination. See illustration. 5.5. The cable leading to the MIG torch had been several different material of the electrical current, the wire electrode, the shielding gas, the torch itself, rather than simply feeding the wire out to maintain the short circuit arc against the work while to keep the welding under the envelope of the shield gas. You have your shield gas in electro solid wire, current conductor, travel, your wire guide, contact tube, gas nozzle, shielding gas, work, and solidified welded metal to the arc. 5.6. The very few other user-controlled handle basic of the MIG welder, just a switch the different amperage settings, the various knobs that control the wire feed speed. The short arc process will actually alternately melting and not melting electrode world wire about 90 times a second. Each time the wire touches the work of the balance of the creates a gap between itself and the work, and when it drops the mountain wire attached with the work blends with the constant arc of the arc on and off, which gives the MIG process the characteristic sizzling sound with the wield and characterized wire speed, amperage of the travel speed, the current use of the DC reverse polarity. Like most of the professional arc welding much provide the deep penetration. Only a few application machines of straight polarity. There's only a few set shallow penetration work with the cover and speed the deposition of the important. The welder has few control for the worry about the setting of the MIG machine. This is the voltage knob with the switching with the control current with the wire speed knob that determines how fast the wiring comes out of the gun. See the illustration. Selecting the average of the amperage of the mace based on the mostly with the thickness of the material being welded. A rule of thumb of the Miller Electric Company is 1 amperage to every 1,000 inch of the plate of thickness. For example, the 1/8 of an inch would cover 125,000 inch plate would require 125 amps. Of course, this does not mean that 1/2 inch plate would take 500 amps to be covered. There are large plates that generally beveled before welding are joined with the root path at the bottom. Several more passes at the top. There are, however, the industrial machines routinely weld a large plate, such on ship decks, a very large diameter and a high amperage, just as the general rule. Other factors such as the wire speed, welding travel speed, affect the current requirement. Similar home to make machines of the amperage setting that are fixed, which are perhaps the 4 different positions for the current knob. The wiring speed knob is infinitely variable on all MIG machines. The more expensive, the more professional MIG machines have the variable corrupt current output. That at least more positions on the switch may have the optional control for the timing welding events. Are the torch cooling on almost the MIG machines? Certainly one of the we're concerned with the home shop is by using air. There are some industrial applications where the water-cooled torches become the higher wire and the higher amperage of being used. Looking inside of the MIG torch, maybe inside of the handle contains the switch to trigger the wire conduity with the metal and plastic tubing liner are covered with a swan neck. That comes out when the holes of the both contact of the wire guide with the tube of the nozzle. The contact is so-called because the actual put of the power to the wire, usually made with the copper to contact with the tube. Always keep the wire output centered with the gas cup and the nozzle. See illustration. Alright, 5-7, the basic MIG torch is quit simply inside of the guide of the tube. It is the wire comes through the switch returns to the power and shielding gas flow curved neck called the swan neck holds the contact tube and the nozzle. 5-8, the wire must fit with the contact tube tube closely as where the power of the transmit with the electrode wire. Note that the contact is recessed inside of the nozzle where the wire sticks out 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch from the nozzle. Most MIG nozzles just twist the pass snap ring exposing the contact tube arrow. You should keep the extra nozzle and spare with several spares for the side of the contact space tubes below that you must also use. Eventually you will weld the wire into the contact tube and have to unscrew it to get it off, then clip off the wire, install a new tube, and also cut and also called the contact tip. Alright, 5-10. It's important to keep the pair of the side clippers handy at all times to your MIG welder. Not only do you need to maintain the correct protrusion of the wire from the needle from the nozzle, but when the wire develops a ball on the end, the arc is easier to start when you snip the ball off. Alright. I believe we're at the since this is where where the power is transferred with the wire, the contact tube must specify the related side of the electrode wire being used because of the unavoidable wear of the contact tube with occasional arcing the runs of the contact tube. This are considered consumable MIG welding. You should have the several spaces any shape of the normal size. The nozzle main functions contain the shield gas envelope of the surrounding the arcing the wire. The most MIG machines have only one side of the nozzle, but in the production application, smaller nozzles are used for the smaller amperage work, and the larger nozzles are bigger job. The see illustration. The nozzle is some of the punishment in the MIG welding of the spatter and the welding debris constantly build up inside. The special tools are available to scrape out of the building build up, and the most MIG welders are usually anti-splatter, non-shield with a gel spray with a keeping down with the build. Always easy to remove with the removable gook when necessary. Obviously, too much destroys the debris builds up in the nozzle and will affect the gas flows to weld the air with causing deterioration and unevenness of the bead. Spread can be directed with the nozzle after cleaning to prevent the future buildup. While the jug comes in a jar left uncapped while welding, even so often that you can have the hot MIG gun and stick the nozzle directly into the weld while leave the coating inside of the hot nozzle on the contact tube. Alright, 511. Some of the MIGs that are very small, very different in size and nozzle, and with a special purpose spot welding center here. Here's the tool with the scrapping debris within inside the nozzle. Eastwood Company makes these multiple function MIG pliers, which can be used to clear the nozzle and snip the wires and hold them in contact and unscrew them. 513. There are three chemicals helpful to perform and clean weld, maintaining the make of the torch in good condition. The anti-splatter spray with gel they use for the nozzle to remove the removal of the debris as easier of the weld through the coating of the by 3M and use the welding through the high-strength steel with later module cars. Unlike other sprays that is applied with the area of the weld, provided with the extra corrosion protection after the weld. Shopping for a MIG welder. The area of the MIG machine that aimed for the consumer of a small shop has greatly increased for the past decade. Most out of the bone of the workers and fabricators in small shops use the dream of having a MIG welder to have around over their capabilities. Most of the machines available at the time they are very expensive, but the self-contained MIG wire-fed attachments are already expensive. Large size arc and TIG power supplies found only in weld shops. The hobbyist auto body man from muffler shops couldn't justify the expense. They changed it when they imported the MIG machines and started with making the impairment in the USA, but the hobbyist made market specifically. The companies adversely advertised the hobbyist publication intended the auto enthusiast shows made presence of the body business community. At first, the biggest domestic welding equipment manufacturer took little notice after the 3 years realized that there was a gap in the marketing and price structure and began to produce similar equipment to gain the emerging hobbyist shop interest in MIG welding. Today, there was a wide variety of machines that offered the domestic imported source for the run of the Galmet of the very small, with the very portable units for the be powered by a 3,000 watt generator if necessary to large shops until they were all the bells until all the bells and whistles with all the bells and whistles. Are the bigger and better the machine, more expensive for the internal components? Sometimes you can get an idea with the relative complexity inside of the MIG machine, complementing to shipping weights for the shopping. For a welder, there are more expensive ones, but they're generally much heavier. This is inside of a MiG 200 from the HTP. When a domestic manufacturer starts competing with the import for the lower price for the MIG market, they are also considerable to talk with the local welding supplier level to how the imports were also good at domestic manufacturing. That anyone who brought cheaper imports would have the trouble later with finding replacement parts. Beginning with all the marketing struggle that there was some of the truth is, but the completion of the today's market was pretty much sort of threw these problems out. There are some of the very reputable companies selling import with MIG and plasma machines. Most often they have them a full line of consumable other replacement parts on hand. As automobiles, there was also some debate in the report that domestic, but today some of the distance how hard to draw would they be using like an or the car. Some more domestic welding machines, the components made overseas. Some imported machines, American-made parts, as well as the MIG machine, plasma cutter that you must fill the resistance imported equipment with your local welding shop. The answer is listing everyone, including especially anyone who know purchased and used equipment and contemplating finding out what they have needed with the parts, services, equipment. If there any problems, equipment under the warranty, be sure to compare usually the part put in the equipment because of the big difference between the required hours of welding a day. Base within the shop, your needs of welding the project of two in a few years. Alright, we have discussed the duty cycle comparison for the previous chapter. Most manufacturers give the duty cycle the rating with the highest amperage, the lowest amperage. You may never use either one. If you contemplate machining is saying at 140 amps capacity, I may have the duty cycle the rating of the 95% of the 30 amps and 30% duty cycle at the peak of the 140 amps. The cycle relates to how many minutes and out of 10 minutes period you can weld continuously without overwelding overheating the machine. At 100% rate, you do not need to stop with anything even after the welding long seams together. In most home shop situations, however, there are not production scheduled and time clock of most of the joints, not long seams as well as probably welded seams such as the corner joint, tubular framework, the utility frame, trailer. They will take only a minute with the less welded up doing the one side time. They will move together another project. Perhaps some of the clamp fixtures ready for the next joint with the welding all the time to the machine is cooling for the stove that never exceed the duty cycle of the F, even the higher amperage of the wear. There's a big difference with the MIG machine. Heavier duty shop, the higher duty cycle. To see the illustration, you should buy a duty cycle that you can afford. Do not be concerned with in the garage. You will spend a lot of time sitting around waiting for the machine to cool off. You'll find out that you will not often weld at the highest amperage output anyway. When you do, even for 30% of the duty cycle is livable. or the illustration. Sometimes the medium-sized machine is called a particular shop that is called the Miller 150U for the muffler shop, but the welder is used for the large size shielding gas bottle for extra welding time. Note that how this welder has been adding the tube air arm cart to also to organize the cables and holding them pliers and splatter gel. Are the two basic types of small MIG welders, which look at the gas shield that you use for the base for the arc welding in the bottom with the compressed gas. The flux type of that you use the nose shield gas bottle with a special wire of the flux core inside of the producing the shield gas that is you weld, much of the like of the vaporizing cope of the arc welding. The advantage and the disadvantage of each type that your choice of what kind of work you will be doing. Most of the machines for the market are used for the bolted bottled shield gas that are some of the units that are equipped with each type of the wiring kit that you've never been needed both. The machines will cost a little bit more than single MIG machines, but because they have a switching device inside of the chain with the reverse polarity when the torch being positive and when the work negative, when the required with the solid wire and straight polarity when the torch negative in the flux coated wire. The flux cord wired machine does not make it pretty well. If that is concerned with to you, whether some of the slag removed afterward, the easier to remove that slag of the arc welding with some of the kind of flux cord wire slag peels off the seam of the strip of the body of the shop work. The extra thickness for the flux cord wire may make the too hot with light gauge and sheet metal. Some experts say. 516, a popular entry level to make welder 110V pocket to make with the Daytona make with the all weights of only 42 pounds and has the amp range for 30 to 110 watts amps, capable of welding 1/4 inch steel, variable portable, ideal home shop, especially sheet metal. For 517, the 110 volts or 130 amp MIG is made with several companies in the home shop market. There's one with the Daytona MIG, the welds at 516 inch shield. Measures the cooling fan. It features the cooling fan with 30% duty cycle, the maximum amperage of 95% at 30 amps. Your 518, if you need a flexible welding indoors out with a combination MIG with the gas shield flux cord wires that fills bills, or the Kobe 88 runs 110 volt with a 130 capacity. Your 159, there are the smaller MIG machines that come with equipped you for the flux cord wires and having an optional kit with the attached with the work with the shield gas solid wire. Each with a company with a wire feed with a 110 volt current with a 20 duty cycle with a maximum average 85 with the fan cooled adequate light gauge welding. 520 Eastwood gas conversion kit with the MIG welder contains the regulator nozzle tip, the other type of the adaptable shield gas bottle with the 85 ampere welder. Alright, the flux core of the MIG welder is best suited for the 18 gauge, thicker metals. Most cars today they use the 20 to 24 gauge steel, except for the 20 gauge air. There's floor pans. Even the replacement steel patch panel with the car is seldom thicker than 20 gauge. Virtually all the new cars use the new lighter gauge material, higher rated alloy, reduce overall weight of the vehicle to meet the tougher fuel economy emission standard. The main advantage of the flux core machines are indoor and high-rafty situation, which way can blow away shield gas with the bottle fed with the machine running with the welding consistent with the flux core wire works with the flens can prepare for the equipment being to remove the indoors outside scripture for the similar project. These projects they have also advantage of not need with the periodic refilling the gas bottle as long as they have electrically on spare rolled wire that nothing for you to run with the halfway of the project on the Sunday afternoon. You can get the gas bottle refilled in exchange. Advantages of the battlefield machines are numerous. Primary benefits of the high quality of the weld, ability to work within very thin material without burning through. With the shield gap, there is very little spared, no slag. You can evenly weld bolt body panel with the painted rusty through the cleaner and the metal will always make the light better. Weld produce less hazardous fumes when seen with the big repair. When you have seen big rig repair MIG welding, new painted fan guard, rusty truck radiator support framework. The budget for the job didn't allow the time, wouldn't spend the grinding and sanding of all the edges and cleaning. The truck had to be back on the road and making money. The result wasn't pretty, but it was more than strong enough for the application testament with what can be done. 521, the upper end of the 110 volt scale with 140 amp unit, one of the HE Americas is a weight of 135 pounds. Welds up to 1/4 inch steel. It has timing features such as the sticking and welding and spot welding. Or if you have 522, above the 140 amp range, you are 220 volt amp category MIG welder, most featured with a higher duty with the capacity. The HT MIG welder 160, which can weld up to the 516-inch steel, has 8 heat settings suitable with the street rod, shop mufflers, and farm use. As far as running out of the gas is concerned, but the issue the most for the home shop, they handle the buying of the bottle is too big for this. They think they need this. Of course, the pair with the gauge for the tank with the indicate the gas flow. A guy going through the welder told the pressure left in the bottle, so that there should be better before any of the project just how big the welding time you have left. Bigger shop is just keep the spare bottle of the gas on hand. Switch if they run out. They send the empty back to the gas supply company, refilling them back to the new spare. In current next consideration shopping MIG, there is no number of home type machines that can be operated standard household 110 volt current. This negates that needing for any of the rewiring of your shop area. They almost made the portable in the sense that you are using anywhere with the source of the standard power. However, any circuit of the welding machine should be at least 20 amp circuit. In this case, the bigger the 110 volt machine, 30 amp circuit is recommended. The 110 volt is confusing in the household current is referred to as 115 volt amp volts at times. 110 volt to 115 volts are the same. Machines are available in power abilities of range of 30 to 110 amps. Smallest home MIGs of 30 to 140 amp range. Largest most of the machines hand wall diameters of 23,000 to 35,000 inch through the import such set up the metric wire size which are close enough to the US size so that they can also ways find the replacement wires to suit them. Above 140 amp range, the maximum power brings you into the bringer shop type machine requiring 220 volt current input. The most of these machines. 523, the 220 volt unit with a 181C, the MIG offers a 220 amp with light sheet metal with 180 amp. The heavier work as the spot time of the disconnect the torch, the suitable light and fabrications shop. Figure 524 for the welding the 3/8 of an inch steel. The MIG as the HT 200 will do the heat setting with the 200 amp suitable for the Harmon Ranch for commercial fabrication. Repeated automotive project built like building trailers or engine stands. All right, 525. The close up of the commercial made street rod that has the steel ring of the MIG welding and two plates for the heavy, the bracket, the suspension mounted, the large meat of the good sized machine. Now, note how smooth clean the weld is and bead looks like the one piece rather than overlapping the part of the lacking beside with the part of the right to the indication of the penetration. Make it is easy to learn, but it takes a lot of practice to make the welds like this. Have an upper limit of 250 amp, which is a lot. They offer 50 duty cycle at this high amperage. Large machines also offer more whistles and bells, such as the large wire spools, the ability to handle more different wire size wheel at the bottom of the machine standard equipment, the capacity of the bracketary to have a large bottle of shielding gas designed as they be bigger job at the medium-sized machine can handle the diameters of 23,625 10,000 inch of an inch, which have the bigger than virtual equipment within home. They stock shop unless they take the amateur bridge of the building. We'll see the 250 amp the MIG machine hard to work with in many shops today. The Buffalo business is the steel rod shop, seat rod hot shop, street rod shops, race car shops, and general steel fabricators. Other options you may find on these mid-sized machines controls various timing the welding function for the regular spot welding long seam with sheet metal with a good set with one of the machines up with a special spotting welding nozzle, which is flat from front ones of the cutting cuts out each of the side, bringing the such nozzle directly in contact with metal and pulling the trigger. Adjustable timer machine setting of the welding time, perfect spot welding time. The spot welding little or no crown build up try to grind off later, as well as you can set up to do the switching welding as well as when you join the work of this series of spot welding overlap the welding machine has a switch time that turns for the arc and pauses, arc and pause, and arc and pause, etc. Switch mode is often used. The switch mode isn't used often, but is helpful to enjoy. Helpful in joining very thin metals, which are the chance burning through the continuous weld. It's switch mode, which pause time is variable. The machine that pause time allows the first bottle to solidify before the next bottle is made, reducing the overall heat. Mid-sized MIG machines also offer the most range of the heating setting of the entry with the level to make the small machine, but that has 4 settings, the lowest to the highest, the amperage of the bigger brother must also have the fine power and add adjustment knob, but they essentially give the 4 more position each for the 4 basic setting main amperage knobs, and so instead of the 4 settings, you now have the possible of 16. Adaptive special attachment offered to some machine include the metal shrinkage of the studded welding attachment. Metal shrinkage work with reduce the high spot in the sheet weld as you would do the acetylene torch, but without the flame's very controlled heat. Basic principle to heat the center of the high spot starts with the having hammered out of the dent in the backside cherry red, quenching it with a wet rag, which shrinks down the high spot with a stretched metal with the make shrinker attached to screws on the plate for the contact tube with the wire is pulled back inside of the torch. The wire isn't used, and the wire is divided into glass flows, and gas flows are disconnected. The shipping tip is placed in contact with the metal and triggered pulled briefly, heating the high spot. Stud welding attachment and other body work and tool allows you to spot weld the smallest ends with the end of the stud with special slide hammer that pulls the studs of the work dented onto the wood, having the drill hole with the body with the screw type of the builder having being traditionally the studs being clipped off, ground off easily with after pulling is done. There is a separate stud welding tool, probably 110 volt current without needing the welding machine. See safety and shopping equipment after chapter. Another stud welding attachment is made with the thread stud electrode fused and placed in the worn out stud and automotive work. See illustrations. Or 526, you see the exhaust system muffler shop deals with the broken, rusted away muffler manifold studs at this time. At the time, the HTP a special feature to make 160 repair with such problems. First, old studs and cutting them cut off flush. 127, 127 is a special attachment to make a hole for the hole replacement stud with the arc holding about the 4-second wire feed through the stud welds into the old stub. 128, the new stud is now welded into place. The strength is said to be 85% of the good as original. Therefore, this feature is really time saver for the busy muffler business. To go out the top level of the make machine, but you're not talking about very expensive professional welding machines, large multiple purpose power supplies mentioned in chapter 2 with the bigger welding machine that's designed strictly with the professional shop with the multiple purpose power supply capable of higher amperage which can be set in the arc welding take of the making or with any polarity required. The amateur use with the never than use with the higher amperage the high duty cycle these top level of the machine. The use of the machine to make welding required to separate the welding feeding the accessory driving system be set up lower price for the MIG market and on big shop for the just to buy a separate MIG welder for those needs. Usually the large power supply just as a TIG welding machine. All right. Let's see how long we got to tape for. I think it's 30 minutes right now.